Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third weekly lime steam, weekly lime steam, leak we wipe weep. Welcome to the third weekly live stream with Connor and Johnny here on the One Human History channel. How you doing, Connor?
I'm doing good. Been traveling this week. Traveled 2 weeks ago as well, but I'm finally back in New York and happy to be in one place. Had a pretty fun week. How about you, Johnny?
Mostly stayed in, had a big project to work on, but the allergies situation in my town has been really bad. So, my apologies if I seem a bit cloudy, if I look even like high, because I'm like, my head just sort of like, and I feel really drowsy, but I'm happy to be here, and I will have plenty to say. I may be a bit incoherent at times, as the intro to this stream suggests. I'm having trouble pronouncing words properly, and I'm slurring a bit. But oh yeah, if you do that, it like
I forgot about that.
yeah, it's really annoying. It always happens when you're in the middle of making a great point, and then you're just like this, and like this freaking thumbs up shows up. It's really annoying. So we have lived through now how many 2 weeks of the new Trump administration. How are you feeling at the end of the second week?
I mean, it definitely doesn't feel like the Biden administration. There's a lot more news. There's a lot more. I don't want to say chaos. I don't want to get into go crazy like the news, but there's a lot of uncertainty happening with jobs. Some jobs that our friends have, some jobs that our family has, and kind of how their lives are going to look. It seems like certain things are shut off, then they're back, and maybe something will happen later, or maybe everything's going to be totally fine.
Right.
How is that going for you?
Well, I'm definitely concerned about the outsized role Elon Musk seems to be playing in this administration for sure. I am concerned about some of the things that Trump has done this week that I would say harken back to some of the things I didn't like in the first administration, that it seemed like maybe this administration would not do those things, but it appears that they are going back to some of those strategies from the first administration. I'm thinking specifically of these sort of like shock and awe campaigns, where you do something really big and bombastic and kind of polarize half the country, and then sort of like see what happens, and you hope that the dice sort of rolls your way when the smoke clears, that everything will kind of be where you hope it'll be. But it seems to create a lot of confusion and is counterproductive to some of the aims that the Trump administration has for the country. So a couple of those things have been sort of like concerning to me. There's other things that are happening in the Trump administration, policy things that I'm more on board with, and I'd like to see continue to be developed. But I'm also concerned about the method of sort of, I mean, I'm not calling him a dictator, but this is not an example of the branches of government collaborating to produce an effect. This is just the president making decisions. It's not unprecedented for a president to be this active and to sort of ignore Congress. We've had other presidents that were like that. Most of the recent presidents, to some degree, have been like that. But I mean, Franklin Delano Roosevelt is a good example as well. And I'm kind of constantly stuck between these two poles, not two Polish citizens, but two one Pole and another Pole, Krzysztof and Agnieszka. I'm kind of between these two extremes of how to view the new Trump administration. Either the presidency has become stale and useless and needs a jolt of energy because times have changed and a president can't be the way he used to be.
Sure.
Or Donald Trump is actively warping the government in such a way that the balance of power is going to completely shift toward the executive branch, and the legislative branch is going to become irrelevant or just a rubber stamp branch, and the Supreme Court,
The judicial
branch is really going to be the place where the public discussion is had. And so instead of like a body of elected representatives discussing what to do about the issue, it's one man who got elected one day in November, taking that idea of I have the people's mandate to the extreme, and basically making unilateral decisions from the top. And then the national conversation around those decisions takes place in the unelected judicial branch, where it's 11 lifers, people with life appointments, are making the final decisions on these things, and that we're going to find that our legislative branch has become pretty much irrelevant. So those are my concerns about the consequences of the approach Donald Trump has taken to the presidency in the first 2 weeks.
Well, it has seemed pretty erratic to some degree. I think we're going to get into the erratic behavior a little bit more down the line. But you had mentioned Elon, and I have 3 different tabs on my computer about Elon. So I just wanted to talk about that really, really briefly at the top. Yes.
Are you able to share those?
No, because I'm on my camera on my laptop is broken. So, but what I will do is I'll send them to you. So the answer is yes and
Yeah.
not. I will send it to you on Instagram right now.
Can you send it in the private chat here?
No, because it's on all of my stuff is on my laptop.
Okay, I'll open Instagram.
I am going to get a new camera very soon, but I haven't yet. But there was like a few different stories on Elon. Some of them are more related than others. The second one is less related.
So I have this.
Yeah. So maybe click the first one, the third one first, and then we'll go right back to that one. Apologies. Sent them in a bad order. But the interesting thing that I was hearing from the things that I watch and listen to is that just like in the first iteration of Trump's presidency, people were on the outs and people were being promoted quickly. It seems like Doge is no longer Elon and Vivek. It is just Elon. Seems like Vivek Ramaswamy is out and is, I believe, running for an elected position.
Governor of Ohio.
Governor of Ohio. Incredible. But he's no longer in Doge. So it's just Doge, the government efficiency, not Dogecoin. So Trump makes the Doge head Elon Musk a special government employee. So okay, it seems like Elon is on the up and up, and we're going to consistently hear from Elon and what he has to think. And then there's the thing. If you can go to the second link I sent to you.
First, we have to just appreciate that image right there. Okay.
The second link is something.
I gotta open that second link.
We were talking about earlier, something about the South African cutting. Donald Trump saying that he's going to cut funding to South Africa over land confiscations. there's a picture of Trump and Elon right there. Maybe they're going to kiss. I don't know.
Very badly.
But yeah, that seems like Trump is getting, in with Elon, the things that he finds to be worrisome. He gave Elon, like we just saw in the other thing, he's become an actual, he's a special government employee. So he's not just like some weird guy floating around. He has a position, he has a job. He doesn't have a desk at the White House, but he's doing something. And this is, I don't know how many times I've heard of a president in the last 20 years talking about South Africa and our involvement in South Africa. So it seems pretty related to Elon Musk. And as it says under the picture where you're highlighting, perhaps, is that it's something that Elon has been talking about for some time.
Yeah, I have this quote here. Efforts to redress inequality have drawn let's start here. Land ownership in South Africa remains highly unequal, a legacy of white minority rule that governments have struggled to address since the first multiracial elections in 1994. Efforts to redress this inequality have drawn criticism from conservatives globally, including South African-born billionaire and close Trump ally Elon Musk, who on Monday posted, "Why do you have openly racist ownership laws?" on his social media platform. So for those of you who are kind of like wondering what this is all about, I would just kind of give a quick history lesson, very quick. So until until the 1990s, South Africa operated on an apartheid system in which, let's just say, legally, people with black skin were legally treated differently than people of white skin. And the people with the white skin were treated better, and the people with the black skin were treated awfully. And that included, so that then trickles down to things like segregation, inability to participate in the country, what's called systematic oppression. And in the 1980s, there was maybe due to the Cold War, the availability of information, the fact that South Africa was our ally, and we were criticizing the Russians for oppressing people, so the Russians would go out and look at all our allies and try to show us, well, but you're hypocrites because you're allied with this country. It's happening with Israel now because we support Ukraine, and we're saying Russia is an evil country that invaded Ukraine. And then Netanyahu goes on his rampage, and the Russians are, and Russian people who support Russia are immediately like, wait. You think you're fighting for freedom, but you support the genocide in Gaza. So this was one of those situations where it kind of lined up, and there was like international scrutiny. In fact, I mean, maybe even just the fact that Paul Simon made his Graceland album in South Africa. All these musicians started going there. There are tons of huge concerts that took place. Peter Gabriel, they brought a lot of attention to apartheid and to the plight of Nelson Mandela, who had been in jail for over 20 years because of terrorism. He committed, he didn't as far as I know, he didn't kill people, but the way I was always taught about was that he engaged in sabotage of, like, he blew up things like train tracks or factories or other things, which technically could be classified as terrorism. In my opinion, should be. But anyway, Nelson Mandela ended up becoming the president. Apartheid ended. He and F.W. de Klerk got the Nobel Peace Prize. So all that's to say that was sort of the 80s and 90s for South Africa was sort of the civil rights movement period. So this was when people were saying, we demand political equality. And this was a demand that most people could support, because they said, if you legally discriminate against another race. That's not democracy. That should be gone from any country's constitution. However, this happened after the freeing of the slaves in the United States. This happened after the civil rights movement in the United States. You give political equality, and then you sort of like look and go, oh, wait, but we can't just give political equality. We can't just say, you're equal, and then go on, carry on the old way. Clearly, we're going to have to be making some changes around here. And some of those changes involved trying to redress the disadvantages people had who had lived under an apartheid system and had been unable to participate in the economy in any way, shape, or form, right? So now it's like, okay, you're free, but shit, you know, the white people, you're equal to the white people, but the white people have decades and decades and decades of working good jobs, owning land, and all these things that you never had even a snowball's chance of doing.
Social and cultural capital as well as physical capital.
Right. So the natural sort of next thing to think, if you are the one who's trying to implement an equality in a country, is to think, well, in the name of equality, we have to do some active measures to sort of raise up this oppressed group so that full equality can actually take hold. Now, what has happened is that one of those methods has been, or at least one of those proposed methods has been to redistribute land so that Black South Africans can have an opportunity to own that land. Now, if you know anything about, let's say, the Soviet Union, for example, the Bolsheviks, they were big into land redistribution, and those land redistributions were often very violent. Because if I own a piece of land and my dad owned it and my granddad owned it and I owned it and I'm working it and I'm producing value up from it, I'm not going to think that it's fair to take it away from me, even if it's in the name of redressing historical injustice. And so Elon Musk, in particular, as a South African, has for a long time been banging the drum against this idea of land redistribution as a form of kind of reverse racism. And I think that's the main reason why Trump, I can't imagine there's any other reason why Trump would take an interest in this situation other than Elon told him, and B, it's in line with his wider anti-DEI initiative that countries shouldn't do anything, or countries should not take active measures to address racial inequalities, because in so doing, they are discriminating. They are engaging in discrimination. So what do you think?
I want to go into your DEI content after this next article. However, before that, the first article, we do have this question from an Always Sunny in Philadelphia watcher. What was the public opinion towards South Africa like in the 80s? Was it as split as Israel-Palestine? I feel like that's a tough question to answer because I don't know how you feel about how split Israel and Palestine are, or the public opinion is on Israel and Palestine. From what I see, lots of friends in New York, lots of friends in DC, some friends on the other coast. I know mostly coastal places. Doesn't really seem that split to me. To me, the split seems between the government, who is constantly on the side of Israel, as Israel is kind of our proxy land and ability to have influence in the area, and Palestine, which is what myself and a lot of friends, I have Palestinian friends. A lot of the people that I know are mostly on the side of Palestine for the grave indifference in what one side has done to another for decades and decades and decades.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's been a contested land for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. One is, it's like one of the first and still active, huge issues, like historical issues. It's the Holy Land for many people, but also is that not part of the Fertile Crescent? Is that not like where most of civilization started? So like, or at least like higher up civilization. It's hotly contested land, but right now, I wouldn't say the public is even remotely split on Israel and Palestine. So in that,
Really? The American public?
yeah,
I think they're very split. I mean,
I
there are a lot of people who, I mean, there are a lot of Christians who, first of all, think that Israel is, first of all, that it needs to exist and so that it provokes the return of the Messiah. Number two, they look at Israel as a state that made the desert bloom. And so they see it as a highly developed country in an area that's barbaric. And so, as Americans, we need to stand with people like us, who are essentially like promoting the American dream, the Israeli version of the American dream in a region that's fundamentally like against our values. So and then there's just like a lot of Israelis and Jews who support Israel. And then there's a lot of people in the middle who maybe are, disgusted by some of the things Israel is doing, but they understand that Israel got attacked first, and so they have a right to defend themselves. And they feel that they look at campus protests and they think of the Palestinian opposition to Israel as being fundamentally Hamas, and the protests in America they see as, you know, tents, kids, dirty, sort of like chaos. And they're with Hamas, and there's a lot of Marxists in that group, and so they may not be rah 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 Israel, but they are at least practicing indifference towards the situation because they're not thrilled with the way that American protesters are approaching it. Now, as far as South Africa, again, the United States was very split. Ronald Reagan was much more supportive of the white South African, the established government there. Actually, I could recommend a great video to watch. It's from 1969, the South Africa apartheid debate, Ireland, 1969. Let me actually just show you a quick clip of it because it's pretty interesting.
While you're searching that, there's another comment. It's from the same person. It seems to me like right-leaning people are mostly pro-Israel, and left-leaning people are split pretty evenly. Seems like younger people tend to favor Palestine, and older people are pro-Israel. Now, I can only speak to what I know and what I hear, but the right-leaning comedians that I listen to are all pro-Palestine. All of I would say the vast majority of my friends, I don't know if I've talked to anyone my age who is pro-Israel. I know a lot of Jews outspoken on social media who are pro-Palestine and are disgusted with being associated with the Jews over there. I know only one entertainer who I work with who is pro-Israel. So from what I've seen, and which is why that's how I started mine, that I didn't feel like it was split, because I see a lot of Republican people who are anti-Israel, and most people on the left, to me, that I see and that I hear and I read articles about, are pro Palestine. So for
Mhm.
me and what I'm seeing is I see a lot more pro-Palestine, but it seems that Johnny is sees a lot of different things than what I do, because we're on different parts of the internet, and also I'm in the comedy business, and Johnny's in the business of people reading books and learning things. So you're going to get two different things from us on that.
Yeah, I will say too. I was living in Poland when this broke out, and most of the right-leaning people I talked to in Poland were with Palestine because, well, frankly, and I'm not dismissing all opposition to Israel as anti-Semitic, but in the case of Poland and the right-leaning people in Poland, I found that anti-Semitism was a huge factor in the decision which side to support. I mean, one of the most outspoken, uh, one of the most outspoken pro-Palestinian politicians in Poland is the most extreme far-right politician currently operating in Poland, Grzegorz Braun, who blew out a menorah display with a fire extinguisher.
He sounds like a real Jagosh.
What?
I was trying to make a jack off joke, like a real jerk off, but it just didn't work. Anyway,
Okay.
interrupted your thing.
So whatever that was, yeah. So I just think that I mean, also a lot of people don't like Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Or but it presents an it's just a very complex situation from the standpoint of how your individual positionality determines where you fall on this subject. Like, I know a lot of people who are very, who go to Israel a lot and who almost always fall on the side of like the oppressed, sort of, so to speak, like very left-wing people who will almost like knee-jerk support whichever group is smaller in a conflict. Or whichever is the dominant group is always bad, and whichever group doesn't have the power is always good. And they seem to always sort of view the world that way. And yet I've seen those same people, if they have connections to Israel or they go to Israel a lot, they suddenly their attitude is a lot different on that one. It's all of a sudden it's, well, they attacked us and we have a right to defend ourselves, and they want to destroy the state of Israel. So, that's called positionality. In other words, where you stand and all the things that affect you personally can go into the calculus of which side you take in a conflict. And I guess since I put this video up, we should watch a little bit of it.
Yes,
but
please.
we've gone off on a tangent, which I'm totally fine with. And really, we kind of committed to that this stream would be about following the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. But I knew that over time we would kind of start to branch out into other areas, which is great.
Yeah.
And this is actually a really interesting debate taking place in 1969 about apartheid in Africa. And I really recommend that you go and find this on YouTube and watch the whole thing. But let's watch just a minute or two of it.
You only hear one side. You only hear anti-apartheid in this country and in Britain. You never hear the good things about it.
Chairman, you take up the running to answer that.
I have gone to South Africa to work myself from Rhodesia, and I'm a foreign African according to the South African situation. Yes. I went to South Africa not because life is better for Africans in South Africa. In fact, you can easily say life is better for Africans in South Africa because you have never been black before yourself, and you have never known how bad it is to be black in South Africa.
Can you hold up, Chen? Can you give us some small everyday examples of what it's like to be black in South Africa?
To be black in South Africa is that you are in restriction daily. You have to carry a pass. You are not allowed to travel late at night in the city except for white people who are God's people.
Sounds like Gaza.
And in South Africa, you are not allowed to go even into certain restaurants because they are all white. There are always signs all over the city that non-whites, people who are not white, go through this direction. People who are not white, who are white, should go through this direction. And the directions through which white people pass, They are beautiful. They are beautiful places, well painted. Everything is fine. You find an African worker working in the mines getting £6, £2 a month, and a white worker getting over 100. And then you say life for Africans is better in South Africa.
What will you say to somebody during the week about the child who was knocked down and an ambulance? I got a garbled version of that somewhere.
Pardon?
A child knocked down and an ambulance coming. Was it you or was it Mrs. Campbell who was saying that? Mrs. Campbell,
I want to hear
a white child being knocked
just a
down
little
or
bit
something.
from the like
say
pro-apartheid
this,
side.
but you know, all this thing going on about self.
Insulting.
I believe.
Here.
This is what you believe. Yes.
I believe.
Hold up.
I believe that emotion is no use in matters of this kind. You've got to apply reason and common sense.
You can have no emotions because you have not been exploited. I know what it means to be
Let me
black.
talk. You see, that is the trouble. You will not let anyone talk. Our civilization,
Primitive and
we can
savage.
say, is 5,000 years old. We began, start from the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Dark Ages, 1066 and all that. Very painfully and slowly we have arrived at the civilization which Europe has achieved today. But the African Negro, I maintain, is about 50,000 years behind our civilization.
Dude, Joe Rogan used to slap back then. All right.
Yeah, first of all, is Mantis Toboggan, is that Langdon?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry Mantis if it's not you, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you're a friend of ours. Yeah, I mean, okay, no, it's not. Okay, so they say. We'll see. We thought maybe we have a friend who sometimes likes to take a fake name sometimes. Oh, awesome. Thanks for coming. Found us on the Mr. Beat video. So
Hey.
Mantis said no, not it's not Langdon. Okay.
We did your comments we were not expecting this. Anyway, that worked really well. What I was trying to say. You go. Say what you
I just thought it's interesting because I think that even though the defender of apartheid is seemingly like saying the most outdated racist things that we could possibly imagine, most of the thing this seems to be what the debate is now. I don't see much of a difference between that conversation and the conversations people are having now, because it's one side is saying we have been the victims of historical injustice that needs active measures to fix, and the other side is saying, well, we've painstakingly built a civilization from which, even if you're oppressed within the confines of that civilization, you're much better off here than you would have been if we hadn't taken the trouble to build this civilization. So even if you're at the bottom of our ladder, you're still at the top of the ladder in terms of the whole human history and all of that. The one human history we have, and so channel name drop, but it, I guess I sort of feel like, okay, well, if you painstakingly built this great civilization, then your great civilization should be able to solve problems and should be continually evolving to solve new problems as they arise. And nobody who's at the bottom of the ladder in any situation is going to say, well, at least I'm not a Neanderthal getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger every night. So since I'm not living in like literally on the savannah, hiding in fear every night from tigers, therefore I should be happy with my situation and I shouldn't complain. Obviously, people are going to complain. However, I think that land redistribution is extremely provocative and has a potential to create violent class warfare. And so I don't know if I know that I'm not really behind the idea of reparations in terms of land redistribution. I think, in America, we talk about reparations in terms of like, if we did reparations, certain people who could prove that they had slaves in their ancestry would receive checks, some sort of monetary compensation. That's a lot different than saying we're going to, start taking land away from one group and giving it to another. Because if I have a farm and it's been in my family for generations and I'm producing value with that farm, and then the government, in a sort of like hoopla of we're going to fix all the injustices in the world, decides that year that it's just like, we're taking your farm. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be at the front door with the shotgun saying, come and get it. So it's not, to me, and the land redistribution is a bit short-sighted, and extreme. But maybe that's just my inner Abraham Lincoln talking, because he was also against land redistribution. But yeah, do we want to move on to another topic, or
just close out the Elon topic?
Mm-hmm.
First link I sent you.
Oh, right.
Was a link. So we've been talking about a bunch of things, but what we started talking about was that it seems like Elon is burrowing his way into Trump more and more. Well, a few days ago, or yesterday, it might have been yesterday, Elon said that Trump has agreed to shut down USAID. Well, this morning, Trump named Marco Rubio as the head of USAID. So there are definitely some things that Elon is getting with Trump, and there's other things where maybe his opinions are not going to be as heard, because I assume what it was a conversation between the two of them, and Trump's like, sounds great, you're a great man, Elon, wonderful ideas. And then Elon's like, great, I'm going to put this out before any media does so that everyone sees how close I am to Donald. And then Marco Rubio, or one of his other, is Marco Rubio his chief of staff? No,
he's the Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, I'm sorry, which is a big deal, of course. So he was talking to his Secretary of State, who was like, that's a terrible idea. And then Trump was probably like, all right, well, then you fix it. And then Rubio said, okay. And then, so, I mean, is that what happened? I have no idea. I'm in New York. I don't know any of these people, but I would prefer I would prefer Marco Rubio to have a closer ear to the president, or have the president's ear more so than Elon. And that was just what I wanted to close out the segment with, because we had been talking about how close it seemed Elon was getting to Trump, but also he's not the only one who is moving forward with the Trump presidency. So there's still a lot of things going on with them.
Well, I think one of the things that's sort of the misconception about these program closures and these department closures that Trump is advocating for is that we sort of have this idea in the US that these agencies are sort of like perennially part of the American government, when some of them have started more recently than you realize. So USAID was created under John F. Kennedy. And the reason it was created is because at the end of World War II, we instituted something called the Marshall Plan, which was meant to help bring development to Europe. So rather than conquer Europe and make Germany our slaves, we decided to send aid and help them develop so that they would be our allies and future customers. It's sort of our innovation on imperialism, which actually I think Vladimir Lenin wrote about this, funnily enough. Just the idea that, and Marx too, it's just the idea that rather than conquering places and making slaves of the local population, we try to take a more hands-off approach to colonialism in such a way that we create customers for our products, so that we have steady work, we have the people there to, we have the people of the locals handling their own governance and handling their own workforce. They produce and then ship to us. We buy those products, and then they themselves are earning salaries and buying stuff that we export from the United States. And so the idea was that to have a lot of strongly well-developed countries in the world that were friendly to the United States, that would have long-term economic benefits because it would widen our customer base, and it would also have a propaganda value of us being able to say, we're not like the old colonizers. We're not just coming here to make you slaves. Now, that continued in the form of various different departments, which John F. Kennedy consolidated into one department called the USAID. Interestingly, Richard Nixon, who under whom the Department of Education was actually created. So that's also one that's fairly recent.
Interesting.
And the department, although that might have been under Johnson, but the Department of the Environment, what's that one called? That one was definitely under Nixon.
He did a bunch of environmental things. He did
Right.
like ocean environmental things. And anyway.
So Nixon actually tried to get rid of USAID, but it didn't work. And then it became more powerful in the aftermath of the Soviet Union falling because the EPA, thank you. The Soviet Union fell in 1991, and the United States, through USAID, basically tried to do Marshall Plan 2.0 for the former Soviet countries, hoping that we could do with them what we did to the former, Nazi-aligned countries and Japan and all these places. So I would say that USAID in 2025 is no longer relevant to its original mission, and that it is now essentially just a charity organization, which maybe is a good thing, and maybe the government should be funding that kind of charity. But now the question of our immediate national interest is in question. And it automatically, for example, when it automatically sort of brings up these questions like, so apparently some places in Sudan are going to be shut down, which is going to cost a lot of lives. But Trump ran on a platform of America First. And so people are going to be asking, well, what benefit is it for us to spend our taxpayer dollars in charity for Sudan, where none of it is working? And Sudan, it continuously for decades has been as close to a failed state as possible, as you can possibly imagine. So this has always been a problem for the US government in terms of assisting people, providing assistance, which is, the argument is always like, it'll benefit us in the long term to assist. But, USAID spends millions and millions of dollars in Haiti. And maybe that's good, but what has been the return on that investment in terms of Haiti? Haiti's in shambles and has been for a long time. The last thing I would just mention is that USAID has a reputation of working with the CIA and sort of helping the United States engage in regime change, particularly in South America and Africa. So it may not be as clean of a organization as people think. But I don't have a personal opinion on whether USAID should continue. All I want to do, and what I always want to do on this stream and on this channel, is to provide what I hope is useful context to understand, so that you're not just going like, oh my God, he shut down USAID, call the police. Like, so you just can try to analyze the situation clear-headedly. And then you can make your personal opinion based on evidence, and then you can pursue that opinion or argue that opinion. This isn't really as much of a debate channel as it is meant to be educational. So, yeah.
And you all just got educated by Johnny.
Maybe. I'm sure that my knowledge on this subject is got its limitations. So please let
I
us know in the comments where we missed it, because we're trying to. The purpose of this channel is to also learn ourselves. So
I had no knowledge on USAID, which is why I called it USAID. But
well,
I
USAID, yeah, it's fine. What do you what we got? We have to talk about. We have to give Trump his mark for the week, and we also have we 15 minutes left, and we have like a lot of topics that we didn't touch. So we have to kind of like pick one. What do you want to do?
I feel like we already talked about DEI a bit. There's the job cuts, and also I feel like the biggest thing we were texting back and forth about last week was the plane crash. I feel like the plane crash is the most important thing. If we want to talk about Mexico very quickly or FBI very quickly, and then go into the planes, that would be.
Let's do this. Let's talk about tariffs in Mexico real quick, and
Good.
then let's get during our assessment of this week in the Trump presidency. We can include the plane crash in there because I was going to mention that in terms of that affected my grade of Trump, his reaction to the plane crash. So yeah, I can't get it to do it, but you can.
I'm on my iPhone. That's why.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just gonna set the camera, and then that won't happen again.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's talk about what's going on with the tariffs, because Mexico has reached a temporary deal with the U.S. to delay the Trump tariffs. China is still a go. Canada is still a go. However, Mexico, we have a deal that involves guns and the fentanyl trade. I guess trade is a
Mhm.
word, smuggling, but the drugs and guns. Trump is trying to get something done in regards to the amount of guns and drugs coming into America. And if he can get something done with Mexico, the tariffs will be halted. Sounds not bad.
Yeah, I agree.
Sounds like a little bit of erratic behavior and a little bit of being a scary strong man could work out in our favor. Some people are like, "Oh, this might draw our allies closer to China." I saw that in some stupid headline. Get it. How about less fentanyl? How about less people dying from the illegal gun trade? I've done several projects in school about guns, and every time, no matter how far I had gotten on, background checks aren't being done, and loopholes for businesses and gun shows, and the amount of people who have multiple hidden. I lived with someone in DC who had a gun who did not have a license. Terrifying. Uh, all of those things, all of those points on more government regulation are all moot when someone just goes, "Hey, they're gonna get them. You can just get them illegally," and then you're
Mhm.
like, "But all my points are right." But if they can just get them illegally, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And
I heard there was like the Trump slump or something they call it. Like whenever Trump gets in, gun sales go down. And so gun manufacturers are always a little kind of pissed off when Trump becomes president because people aren't running to buy up the guns before the new, regulations come through. I don't know how true that is, but that's something you hear about.
the guy that I was living with who had an unregistered firearm said, when I asked him who he voted for, it was 2016. He said, I'm a single issue voter, and I voted to keep my guns. And I was like, sick, dude. I'm glad that. And as soon as Trump got elected, he put a signed it's a fake signature, but a signed picture of Trump in our living room. Guess how often we were able to bring girls back to the apartment?
In DC? Yeah.
Yeah, they hated it.
No, you couldn't even, you can't even like, You can't even talk like the kind of way we're talking on this stream on a date, or that date's in DC. She's going to end the date real fast unless she's like a Republican consultant or something.
Yeah.
I've had those actually awkward conversations on dates where the date was going really well, and then she started saying, she said something about Trump that I felt was factually incorrect and sort of pointed it out, and then that was interpreted as, oh, what? Wait, you like Trump? You're a Trump fan? Oh, you're a Trumper? Blah, blah. Oh, I need to get out of this date right away. And we're just like, I didn't say any of those things. I'm just saying that that piece of news that you heard, like, he thinks our soldiers are suckers and liars, or suckers and, what does he say? Suckers and whatever. He thinks that people who fight for this country are suckers. And I sort of said, like, okay, like, where did you hear that? And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, you heard it from an article in The Atlantic, which is the most anti-Trump paper in the whole country, run by a former George W. Bush speechwriter, David Frum, right? Who is like who has been anti-Trump before it was even cool. And they quote a guy who Trump fired from his administration, who said later in retrospect that Trump had insulted the troops. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't say it, but it's like, if you're just going to repeat something because in your mind it hurts Trump and therefore that makes it true, I am not aligned with you in that mission. Although I may be aligned with you in resisting certain things that Trump does, I am not aligned with the mission of, I will not be truthful about things because it hurts Trump. I'm not. That goes against my core values. Actually.
It also makes the issues way worse because we're no longer, I was talking about this in Texas yesterday. When one side arms up, the other side immediately arms up. And by arm up, I mean anything. Sometimes it's getting super angry and being like, this side's fascist, and the other side is like, no, you guys are actually the fascists. Or maybe they use a different word than fascist. But in this case, if you're just going to lie, the other side is going to be like, well, who cares? If they're going to lie, then we're going to lie. It's like siblings. It is like a sibling fight. Like,
right.
Someone brushes, I brush up against my sister. She's like, what the heck, and pushes me, and then I punch her in the eye. And that didn't happen. But anyway, like,
you just admitted to punching your sister on this stream. How do you feel?
As soon as I said it, I was like, I don't hit women. But
in retrospect, upon further investigation,
this never happened. But like it seems like, it's a back and forth, and it always has been and it always will be. It's two fighting groups over power. And so taking the side of anything said against him, anything bad said against him is good, only hurts you in the end. That is honestly how he got elected in the first place. Right. So it is a waste of time. But anyway, back to the Mexicans. Do we have, is there more on this? Or is that talk about it?
We were going to talk about, so he came out on Saturday and said that he was going to put 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China. Now, Mexico has managed to forestall those by capitulating to some of Donald Trump's demands. I guess it's, for Donald Trump's purposes, this is a good thing, because beyond just the good headline, if there was going to be some kind of like united front between Canada and Mexico to try and like resist Trump's demands and just take the tariffs, it appears that united front is breaking down, because first of all, Trudeau is on his way out. Yep. And it could be Poilievre who comes in his place, who's the conservative leader. It's not for sure, but Canada could shift right. Mexico just elected this like badass woman president that like
Yeah.
every liberal in America is just like, oh my God, oh, it's like she's gonna fight Donald Trump, you know, and like so far in every single confrontation between her and Trump has won. Yeah, go ahead.
I continued to read, and I actually had missed some of the deal between the two. One of the things that she won in the deal is that she got Trump to promise that the U.S. would do more to tackle the traffic of high-powered weapons from the U.S. into Mexico. So there is, and well documented, that there's illegal guns coming from Mexico into America. But one of the things that I didn't realize is that they were also talking about weapons from the U.S.
Yeah, but what could Trump possibly have against saying yes to that? I mean, she can kind of say like, "Oh, I got something from him," but like, why wouldn't Trump be agreeable to that? Yeah, we'd love to stop having cartels buy American guns. Like, so it doesn't seem like seem like she was asking Trump for anything that would be that difficult for him to agree to in that situation. Whereas he's asking these countries to do things that they really don't want to do. Like, obviously, if you're Mexico and you've got like a certain number of criminals in the United States, why would you want to make any effort to have those people repatriated to your country? You'd be perfectly happy to have them be over there. But
she said that she exhibited a masterclass on how to deal with Trump. And if this is what it's going to be, if Trump is going to like essentially win a standoff and then have the news praise the other side, that's the best of both worlds. We win a deal, and then the news is like, no, you guys are so great. No, we're still buddies. You just fleeced us. That's like such a New York. You fleeced me. I can't believe I'm doing the deal. You absolutely won. Sign right here. You absolutely won. What a great negotiator.
It's like you pick up the little kid with the basketball and you put him up to the hoop and he drops it in and you're like, you beat me, slam dunk. Okay, you got me. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note,
let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's grade Trump's second week. Now, before we get into the grading, I just have to make this clear because I make these videos all the time. And people I know sometimes see them and then they come at me and go, you were defending Trump. Like, what happened to you? And I'm like, it's just not the point of the stream is not to defend or like Trump or whatever. The point of the stream is educational. And we just feel that there is enough media out there that is taking one side or the other and raising and sounding the alarm every day that maybe you come to us for something else. You know, when you just don't feel like watching MSNBC or Fox or One News Nation, you can come watch us and get like a more balanced, calm, education-focused analysis. So when we grade President Trump, we are not expressing our opinion on him personally, or we are not expressing support or opposition towards him. We are simply looking at how did he do this week? And like in terms of getting through the week as president, did he have a good week or a relatively bad week? And so sometimes we'll give him a high grade because he accomplished all these things, even if those things aren't in line with what we personally would hope the government policy would be. We're just trying to sort of keep tabs of like when he had a good week and when he had a bad week. And then we can kind of look back and say, okay, during his first 100 days, he had like 3 superstar weeks. And then he had a bunch of weeks that were mediocre and a couple of really bad ones. So with that said, we're going to give Trump a grade for this week only. And Connor, would you like to go first?
I actually think you should go first, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I just felt like I just talked a bunch, so maybe they'd want to hear your voice, but that's okay.
And here's my voice, and now back to Johnny.
Okay, I'll be quick. This week I give Trump a B because he's continuing to have a lot of success with his agenda, in terms of his deportations and immigration policy. His tariff policy continues to appear to pay off. That could change. These are only the first 2 weeks. This is why I'm trying to be clear about why we're just grading the week itself. All of these things could later become the reasons why he ends up having a big mess up later. But for now, the tariff policy appears to be working in terms of the threat of tariffs producing the results that you want. The problems, the reason I gave him a B this week is that he had a couple of things that he did a couple of things that signaled disorganization and chaos in the administration, including his freeze the federal grants, unfreeze the federal grants, in terms of offering people money to quit their jobs in an email, but not actually giving them like a formal sort of like guaranteed thing that they could sign and be sure that legally they'll get, like they just sent them an email saying like, yeah, we'll pay you till September if you quit now. And they're just expecting people to go, I quit. And then even though they could say I quit, and then the government could just be like, yeah, well, we're not paying you. And then they'll be like, but you said you would. And they'll be like, yeah, but we never signed, you didn't sign anything. So that was a really bad idea, in my opinion. It was bad PR for the administration. And finally, the speech Trump gave after the plane went down in DC, even if what he said was true, put 2 thumbs down. I think it creates, yeah, there you go. It makes rain. If your family member had died in that plane crash, and then you went to watch the president get on and say, we're really sad about what happened, and he said it was Pete Buttigieg, he's got a good line of bullshit and DEI, and then when the reporter said, why aren't you down at the crash site, he said, what do you think, I'm going to swim? Like, you don't need, look, he's a funny guy. He's got plenty of one-liners and jokes that he can bust out in any other context. That's just like don't.
It's not presidential. It's not presidential at all, but God, that's funny.
Well, because the question was stupid. Like, why aren't you down there? Well, yeah. Nobody needs me to be down there right now. It's fucking,
I can't swim.
Right. But for him to say that, he was just like, what do you want me to swim? And it's just like, bro, these poor people, they lost, some of the people lost everything. They lost their husbands, their daughters, their friends, their coworkers. Like, yeah. Compare that to Ronald Reagan's speech after the Challenger went down, where he just went down, he just got on there and was just like, he gave the most heartfelt speech. It makes you cry to watch it. And then at the end, he still said something about, he was like, NASA will continue. Like, he knew that there was an issue of like, oh, this could tank NASA. So he was like, no, this is part of the cost of exploring space. Sometimes people get hurt and sometimes people get killed, but we're going to keep exploring because the people who went on the Challenger, they died for this. They knew that there were risks, and we know that there are risks, but we'll never achieve anything without risk. And we mourn the deaths. And it's the most beautiful speech. And Trump is never going to have a Challenger speech like Reagan had. I mean, it's one of the things that even people who hate Reagan are like, wow, yeah, but he handled the Challenger right. Trump has really got to fundamentally revamp his approach to speaking it on a tragedy, because even a lot of Republicans, even a lot of MAGA people were like, not into that. So for those reasons, I would give Trump a B this week.
So a downgrade from last week.
He got an A last week. This week he gets a B.
Well, the reason why I wanted to go after you, I knew he was going to go down in your book. Last week, I gave him a C+. Probably should have said a C. But this week, I'm giving him a B-. So I've actually gone up. And the reason why I've gone up, everything that Johnny had just said about mishandling the plane speech, absolutely a hit. However, his presidency has always been chaos. During his first presidency was like, I'm going to do these things, and then immediately rolled them back. And we were talking before the stream that if you're the president who says I'm going to take back government spending, and then you start cutting government excess, some of that is going to affect a friend of mine, Johnny's sister, perhaps. But like, that's what he said he was going to do, and there is a lot of fat to cut. And what will most likely happen is he's going to say, I'm going to cut all this, and he's going to cut very little, but give the programs the idea, the notion that there isn't extra money going around, and that you don't have that everything you do have, you need to spend correctly, and spend on hiring people, and spend on making sure that whatever you're working with is the best equipment that you need for whatever you're working with. And you're not going to have excess for fun vacations or going to make it easier and more fun to work in your place, instead of just getting the job done because you work for the government. I think that, like, it's always going to be chaos. And that was part of why I gave him a C+ last week, because it was chaos. It's still chaos. Nothing has changed there, but he's getting a few deals done, and he's always going to say dumb things to me. He's always going to say something horribly stupid. However, well, I mean, that was a huge talking point for like two or 3 days for us. I feel like, Johnny, we were texting about that, and it's over already. Was it a huge mistake? Yeah, it was a huge mistake. He'll learn and say something slightly less bad next time.
Yeah.
And I don't think it did that much to hurt or change what we thought of him, or the direction the country was already going in. So, I mean, a B- isn't like great job, Donald, but it's there's clearly things to work on. There's clearly things that make people worried. But I think for me, the things that I pay attention to, it seems like some of the crazy things I thought he was doing last week, like tariffs, may give us some good deals moving forward. And I'm hopeful that, even though I did not vote for him or like him, that he has benefits, and the things that he said he wanted to do some of them hopefully will help us. So to me, I give Donald the B- for this week.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our stream today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with probably one more episode on Trump. Maybe we'll talk about his cabinet picks, because we haven't really talked about it. That's another reason why Trump should get a high grade, because he's actually confirming his cabinet at lightning speed, which is pretty amazing. Now, the context is different. The Congress has become basically a relevant rubber stamp, but it's still like they're moving quickly. You talked about chaos, but like, in terms of his cabinet picks, things seem to be going in the right direction.
Rubio.
I mean, yeah, we'll see how Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard do, but I think they'll get confirmed, and Kash Patel and all those guys. So we'll be able to talk about all that next week. And keep an eye on our channel. We got plenty of shorts and videos coming up. I got a video I'm still working on about Trump and McKinley and their similarities. So
I got a couple
that
coming, and I do want to say right before we get off that we are thinking about doing it at 2 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Central time every Monday. We want to make sure that we're doing it at the same time every week, so you guys know exactly when to tune in. So unless something changes, and we'll post about it, we're going to try and do every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Be safe out there. Be kind to your fellow neighbor. Talk to people who disagree with you. Stay friends with people who voted differently than you. Don't give up on America and the world. Bye.
Peace out. Oh, balloons.